Peace, everybody. What's good with you? My name is Willie Green. I'm a producer, engineer, and sonic artist from Brooklyn, New York. And welcome to my studio, The Greenhouse. And today we're going to take a look at a beautiful new reverb plugin called Temperance Pro. Let's check it out. Let's see what's happening. So, I always got to bring some heat for y'all. I always got to bring a nice record. And today we've got a brand new joint from Armand and the Alchemist. This record is called Dogeared, featuring Kapwani. It's my personal favorite off the new album Mercy, but there's a lot of bangers on there, so choose your own favorites. Beautiful sung chorus on here, as we had to splash it with the Temperance Pro. Let's take a listen back, just hear a little bit so we can get some context, and then we'll dive in.
For you, then who's it for? I still will where I want. I'm okay with nothing. That's not my only problem. Numbers on the board, another mark in the column. Pardon.
We're going to focus here really on the chorus, but just a little bit of the lay of the land here on the session itself. The beat itself is a 2-track. I'm getting a lot of the stereo beats coming in, especially something like this, the way the Alchemist works. It comes in and it's already sounding, basically there because it's coming from Al. So my job is just to finesse it and expand a little bit, but to keep the true nature of what came in, right? A lot of times mixing is what you don't do, not just what you do add to a song. So we've got our beat here. And we have lead vocals here from Lucid and from Woods. And then right here in the middle, we have our hook from Kapwani. The way I was sent this chorus vocal is there's a bunch of layers, but I was just sent one stereo file of all the layers, right? And so that kind of speaks a little bit to my approach with Temperance, but let's take a listen and then we'll see how we apply Temperance Pro to this vocal.
From nothing in front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see.
So there's a good amount of stuff going on in there. We've got a lead, we've got a number of background layers, but that's just front to back. I need space. So when it's coming in like this, let's hear it with Temperance. And let's take a look at what I'm doing with the plugin itself, and we'll talk about it.
From nothing in front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see.
I mean, come on, man. When you listen to the reverb trail, it's like you get it, right? It's beautiful, but why is it working it so well? Why is it beautiful? Well, that's the magic of Temperance Pro. So one of the things that I feel kind of gets lost in the audio world of we're talking about frequencies and notching things with EQs and all this kind of stuff is that frequencies equal notes, and notes are frequencies, and these things are not separate, right? And that's what makes Temperance Pro so brilliant to me, where it's a reverb that, first off, it sounds great because it's Eventide, so you know what time it is, but also it is accentuating or de-accentuating frequencies within the key of a song, right? So as I'm approaching this record, and let's go back to the instrumental solo for a second. So Al's in his bag on this one, right? And there's a lot of weird kind of, moving tones and kind of, we make abstract stuff. So even with what is seemingly a simple beat here, there's a lot going on in there, but there is a tonic bass to the record, right? So the beat itself is in the key of D flat major. So the first thing that I'm doing here with Temperance is we go down to the manual note selection tab, we choose a scale, and right now here we are in D flat major, right? And so now I can temper and I can focus on those chord tones or detemper, which is, I don't know if that's what they call it, but that's what I say. And I can avoid those chord tones if I want to go more dissonant. which I often do if you know my records, but today we're going to stay sweet. And so we're going to temper that and focus on the tones that exist within this record and give it that sweet sound.
In front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see. Feel me, feel me, feel me.
She finished her drink and looked.
So as we temper more and we lean into those chord tones, into those scale tones, to my ears, we do get a little bit of that sweetness. We kind of lean into the happy soundingness of the chorus, which is really important to the contrast to what's happening in the rap verses. And now let's hear that in context with the beat itself and make sure that we're all working together in the same world, right?
In front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see. Feel me, feel me, feel me.
She finished her drink and looked at me.
You know, and the other thing that's happening here is as we start to leave our scale tones, right, and we're detempering, the reverb becomes a bit more obvious and a bit more forward in the track because we're enhancing things that are in contrast with the record that we're working with. And then as we go and we temper more, it almost seems to blend a little bit, right? And so that's a really, really valuable thing for me where I'm always EQing reverbs after the fact to get them to fit, and I'm scooping out places and this and that, but it's like, well, I don't need to EQ so much, I don't need to scoop so much if the verb itself is in key with the record. That's doing it for me. It's adding clarity or providing clarity to what I'm doing and leaving out the kind of dissonant stuff that I might be trying to notch out anyway. I mean, nobody else is doing this, y'all. This is a very special thing, right? And then we get here, and this is unique down when we get into this filtering section. It looks like your standard filters. You can have your high pass down here, your low pass, but then we've got these two here. And that's a very interesting part. You may want some of that top end, but maybe you don't want to adjust your tonal aspects, your tempering up top. So you can use these sliders here.
From nothing in front of me,
So I may want to only temper from B5 on down, or I may want to use the tempering and have an effect all the way up to the top of my frequency range. You can adjust that as well. So it's not just filtering, but also affecting the tempering. So there's two ways that you can adjust the sound of your reverb along with the temper controls. Let's take a look at this note width here for a second. So we're focusing on certain notes, but how wide do we want that control to be? Well, that's what the note width is for.
from nothing in front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see.
Oh, we've had to go with a higher note width. That sounds nice, right? So it just kind of spreads it out and allows more impact of the tempering or less. And so again, just more fine control, right? The whole idea, mixing effects, whatever you're choosing, is that they should all be serving the song, right? If everything that we're doing, from the raps to the beat to the mixing to the reverbs, all focused on serving the song, then everything is headed in the right direction and you're gonna have a great record. Temperance Pro can be so nuanced and blend in, and it's not necessarily about, hey, look at all the effects I'm doing, look at my razzmatazz. It's, let me do something that's gonna blend and support and enhance this particular record, this particular vocal, and then everybody wins. As it is, I'm tempering my entire reverb, right? So early reflections, late reflections. But what if I want more control over that? What if I just want to focus on the early reflections, right? And you see I'm leaning more on the early stuff here because I wanted some brightness with it and not just long trails. So I'm leaning more into the early. So let's focus on tempering our early reflections. Let's hear what that sounds like.
From nothing in front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me.
There's a lot of richness there. It's a bit bolder, which if we listen in context is going to make that pop out a little bit more, right?
In front of me, underneath, behind me,
right, so that is on the early reflections. Now let's switch the target over to the late reflections and hear what that sounded like.
In front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see. Feel me, feel me, feel me.
Little less bold, but a little smoother, right? So we don't have same brightness that we get from the early reflections, which are going to come back and hit your ears faster. It's early rather than late, right? All right, we're going to use this one called creeper verb because we're going to use the creeper verb, right? Let's see.
Nothing in front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see. Feel me, feel me, feel me.
I mean, that's damn near a synthesizer right there, right? So there's another way that we can approach this where, on an Alchemist track, I'm not adding instruments. That's not how that works. But if I'm working with the sound, if I'm composing something, if I'm, sampling something and I have a sound, but it's like I want to take that, I want to synthesize, I want to turn it into a pad, something like that. That's where I might go with something dense like this with this creeper verb or some of the other options. And I can really take that and create an instrument with it. Now we've got this kind of resonant pad thing going on there. We can add that to the track and just blend it in. We can print that and sample it and chop it and turn that into another effect. This is not just pretty space around something, but it's got the flexibility to be able to be an instrument as well as a special effect on something else. So along the lines of using this to create synth sounds and pads, we've got a built-in sequencer. And your first question is probably, why does my reverb have a sequencer? To do the wild stuff like I'm about to show you right here. So on the same track, we've got our vocals soloed, and we've created just a simple little sequence here where Temperance Pro, the tempering is going to follow the chord sequence that we put in here, right? So we've got our C sharp major, our D flat major, then we're going to go to F minor, and then we're going to go to G sharp major, and Temperance Pro is going to follow these chords that we put here and temper along with that, right? So let's take a listen.
Nothing in front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see. Feel me, feel me.
I mean, so that's the ultimate next step. We're already focusing on tones and chord tones, but now being able to create patterns within that really, really turns Temperance Pro just from an effect into an instrument. You can use that, resample your reverb, take it, splash it into other effects. Like we could take this and then put it into Black Hole and get really spacey, do some really wild stuff. This opens up a lot of capabilities. And I want to play this back now, and I want to also take a look at the offset and the density controls here. These are the last things I haven't really looked at. And the density, it's just that. It's the amount of modes that are in the response, and it's going to add density or more discrete clarity to your track. I want to go back to the original verb that I had just to display this and how I used it in this record. So we have a 2-track beat here, as we know that itself is pretty dense, and there's a lot of melodic and harmonic information in there, right? And so the more dense I make this reverb, we're creating kind of this cloud of verb around the vocal. But the question is, do we want it cloudy like that, or do we want to leave some clarity within the track? So let's take a look at that. So in this mix, I'm actually leaning less dense, right? If this were just a solo vocal, I might want the density to create this nice lush space behind it. But with such a kind of dreamy beat underneath it already, where there is a lot of long harmonic tones and stuff going on, I want to keep it a little less dense, and so you can hear a little more concrete reflection and brighten the vocal rather than having this lush, dense thing behind it, which will blend down more. but for this particular record is not what I'm looking for. So that's how I would use the density on this here. Let's take a listen to the offset and how we can bend the response of our reverb and add some dissonance where we want that creatively.
Pardon.
In front of me, underneath, behind me, above me, in front of me is what I see. Feel me, feel me, feel me.
She finished her drink and looked at me inquisitively, asking, "What's the role of a poet?"
Right? So now our reverb is not just an effect, it's a compositional tool. We're adding tension that we can release into the next verse. There's a lot of possibilities. Look up for my next record. I'm gonna try that on the next one. But there's a lot of possibilities here to not just sound pretty, but to be musical and have this be an instrument to make our art, not just something to make sound for content. We're making art. We're doing things intentionally. We're pushing boundaries to make things that are challenging and beautiful. That's the kind of records that I like to make. And Temperance Pro is one of these tools that allows me to do that in the most musical way.
Times like these, I never answered, but he stuck with me all week. Riding the bus, fixing something to eat, putting the kids to sleep.